has the relationship between Queen Camilla and Princess Catherine taken a sour turn? Here's why a heated moment between the two at Queen Elizabeth II's funeral has royal watchers talking.
It was the type of event that was never scheduled on the royal calendar. No public announcements. There are no press releases. Not even a whisper was heard until days after it had passed. But within the ancient stone walls of Windsor Castle, under the flickering glow of candlelight and the careful gaze of a chosen few, an event occurred that sparked one of the most stunning royal firestorms in recent history. Kate Middleton was declared the true queen in a private royal ceremony, not in the legal sense yet. However, in terms of symbolism, stature, and emotional allegiance, it was a more powerful declaration than any trumpet, and it has disastrous effects. According to sources inside the palace, top members of the Church of England led the modest event, which was held in near total secrecy, with some high-ranking members of the royal household in discreet attendance. At its center was a single symbolic act, the spiritual anointing of Catherine, Princess of Wales, as the future monarch's queen, not just in name but also in intent. According to insiders, King Charles was noticeably absent. No one knows whether it's out of caution, consent, or dispute. But what is certain is that Queen Camilla was purposefully excluded, not even notified until after the event had taken place. And when did she find out? She allegedly lost her sanity. This was more than just a breach of protocol. Camilla described it as a knife in the back, a startling betrayal organized not by the press or the public, but by her own stepson. Prince William, the future king, had orchestrated a symbolic coup, which many now regard as the unofficial coronation of Kate as the monarchy's next great matriarch. To the public, everything appeared shiny and intact. Camilla continued to grin at garden parties, wave at parades, and stand with Charles during official ceremonies. But within the palace gates, a quiet conflict had begun, one based not on titles or power, but on inheritance. This is the narrative the palace never wanted to tell. A secret ceremony, a rising queen, and the moment Queen Camilla was forced to accept a harsh reality. Her reign may have been genuine, but her crown no longer held significance. For decades, Camilla Parker Bowles was the lady that Britain despised. She was not born into royalty. She did not marry into it in the halcyon days of youth. Her route to the throne was marked by tragedy, scandal, and unrelenting public criticism. And when she finally emerged as queen consort, there were no jubilant crowds, only residual skepticism. Camilla's fight for acceptability began even before Charles donned the crown. Her affair with the then Prince of Wales during his marriage to Princess Diana solidified her reputation as the royal villain in the eyes of millions. The tabloids dubbed her a homewrecker. Diana famously stated in a television interview, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." Camilla remained in the shadows for years, uninvited to formal engagements, booed by the people, and left out of the picture while Charles worked to rebuild his own image. Camilla's role was purposely softened even after their marriage in 2005. There's no Princess of Wales title. There was no overt embrace from Buckingham Palace. Just a cautious dance with the public, who still regarded Diana as the true Queen of Hearts. The tide appeared to finally turn in 2022, when Queen Elizabeth II made an extraordinary declaration, expressing her sincere wish for Camilla to be acknowledged as Queen Consort. Camilla seems to have crossed the threshold briefly. The masses stopped jeering. The media softened. Royal aides began to address her in official language with deference and respect. However, Camilla never felt completely accepted. Behind the veil, whispers continued. Staff reportedly grumbled about her coldness and commanding presence. Even as Queen Consort, she was tolerated rather than welcomed by the insiders. Her stepchildren, Prince William and Prince Harry, had a strictly professional connection with her. What about the public? While Camilla had made some progress, she remained far behind Kate Middleton in terms of popularity and trust. And that maybe was the most profound wound of all. Because whereas Camilla had spent decades battling her way to respectability, Kate appeared to glide there effortlessly. Kate was seen as graceful, poised, and palatable from the moment she first appeared in public. She married William without controversy. She raised her children warmly, and she embodied everything the modern monarchy sought to be: young, accessible, and elegant. The media adored her. The people adored her. More importantly, the palace was designed around her. Camilla had fought tooth and claw for every inch of acceptance she had gained. However, in private, she couldn't help but notice that Kate was being treated as the true queen-in-waiting, with no scandals or struggles. Every photo op, gala appearance, and meticulously organized event appeared to promote the same idea. Kate represented the future. Camilla, despite her title, was only a bridge. Camilla knew it. One royal assistant subsequently claimed, "She'd smile for the cameras, but you could tell she was watching every move Kate made. She didn't necessarily consider her a threat, but she observed what everyone else did." The queen consort had the title. However, this is not the center of the monarchy. That belongs to Kate. Camilla hung on. She embraced her responsibility with quiet elegance, promoting literacy and domestic abuse charity. She dressed regally, stood dutifully by the king, and tried her hardest to convey the appearance of a queen who had earned her position. However, the foundations beneath her were already moving. When rumors of a private ceremony proclaiming Kate as the spiritual true queen reached her ears, it was more than just a setback for her pride. It was the pinnacle of every insecurity she'd worked so hard to overcome. For Camilla, the question was not whether she was queen. It was a question of whether anyone perceived her that way. And soon, the answer would emerge, igniting a royal storm that would rock the kingdom to its core. Prince William has always known that his reign would be nothing like his father's. Whereas Charles had to deal with decades of controversy, lukewarm popularity, and Diana's enormous shadow, William's route has been precisely planned: clean, modern, and emotionally in tune with the people. And from the start, one truth was undeniable. The public never questioned who his queen would be. It wasn't only about love. Kate Middleton, the current Princess of Wales, has been accepted as the monarchy's future in a manner Camilla never was. From royal tours to charity engagements to state banquets, the public's attitude to Kate has been consistent: admiration, trust, and an almost mythic sense of elegance. William noticed, and in the quiet hallways of Kensington Palace, surrounded by a new generation of advisors and strategists, a vision emerged, modernizing the monarchy around himself and Kate, free of the baggage of the past. To many inside the firm, this was more than just a stylistic shift. It represented a generational transition. One insider stated, "William does not want a monarchy that limps around due to Charles and Camilla's past scars. He wants one resurrected in his likeness, and Kate's." So, step by step, William began reshaping the institution from within. First, he advocated for a smaller, closer royal family, reducing extensive titles and ceremonial functions. Then came subtle tweaks to event planning, press tactics, and internal protocols. He streamlined processes, concentrated control within his own staff, and minimized Camilla's public visibility without making it appear purposeful. But the most stunning action occurred when William apparently sanctioned a secret affirmation ceremony, a very symbolic if unofficial gathering that honored Kate as the spiritual future queen. It was not in the books, there were no cameras, but it was true, and everyone in the palace knew it. When questioned privately about why such a move was taken, one aide remembered William's chillingly calm response, "The people have already picked a queen. I'm just making this official." For William, It was not about titles. It was all about momentum. And Kate had it. Camilla, despite her efforts and the crown, has never completely grabbed the nation's heart. William understood that the monarchy's long-term survival hinged not on rank or formalism, but on trust. And the public trusted Kate. William saw it as only right for her to be symbolically crowned as the monarchy's moral queen. After all, she had already won over the crowd. This simple ceremony was only a gesture to the future he hoped to create, one in which the next queen was already present. Of course, this new order came at a cost. Camilla had battled too hard for her place to be quietly removed. But William, calculated and composed, continued on. He did not require Charles' explicit approval. All he needed was the public's tacit permission, which he had. This wasn't simply the start of a new regal chapter. It represented a purposeful rewrite of succession, legacy, and perception. And at the heart of it were William and Kate, not simply as heirs to the throne, but as architects of its regeneration. Camilla, still officially queen, had been edged out without uttering a single word in public. But the private ceremony altered everything. The impending storm was beyond the palace's control. If anyone had been allowed to know what happened, it would have made global headlines. Inside a secluded chapel on the grounds of Windsor Castle, behind dim candlelight and towering stained glass windows, a few select royals, clergy, and close aides gathered for what many now refer to as Kate's silent coronation. This was not a legal crowning. This is not a constitutional change. But there was something else that felt equally significant to those in attendance. A ceremonial confirmation of Kate Middleton as the true queen-in-waiting. There were no trumpets, no balcony waves, no velvet robes. Instead, there was stillness, sacred, purposeful, and profoundly symbolic. The ceremony had apparently been prepared for months in complete secrecy. Only a few people were aware of its existence, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, a few senior royal advisors, and of course, Prince William. Even King Charles had been kept at arm's length, with only faint indications that something private and spiritual was being planned. When night fell, security was tight but unobtrusive. No huge procession or motorcade. Kate arrived in a black sedan, dressed simply in cream and with a sweet look that belied the gravity of the situation. Inside the chapel, candles burned on the altar. Diana's favorite flower, white lilies, had replaced the royal insignias in a subtle manner. The air seemed heavy with reverence rather than stress. And as the Archbishop spoke, it became evident that this was more than just a benediction. This was the passing of the torch. According to sources, the Archbishop spoke not just of prayer, but also of legacy, referring Kate to the tradition of queens who led the monarchy through periods of crisis and restoration. At one point, he allegedly turned to her and remarked, "You were not chosen by blood, you are chosen through grace. The future will look to you not for your status, but for your integrity." Kate, fighting against tears, remained calm. Those in the chapel reported she never changed her posture, even as the Archbishop tenderly laid his hand on her head and anointed her with oil. Just a drop, as a token of heavenly favor. Insiders allege the oil came from the same bottle used at Queen Elizabeth's coronation. Then came the final words, which rang like thunder in that hushed room. "In spirit and in service, rise now as the queen who will be." The assembled visitors, which included some top aides, members of William's staff, and a select few clergy, stood in silent acknowledgement. No applause. There is no celebration. Just respectful reverence for a ritual that was never intended for photography. Kate's face was peaceful as she exited the chapel, but her status in the monarchy had forever changed. She remained the Princess of Wales on paper. However, in the hearts of those who mattered, and in the symbolic order of things, she had recently become the crown's emotional sovereign. That night, no public records were made. There was no official paperwork signed. However, within the palace, the message was clear. Kate had been spiritually crowned. Whether Camilla liked it or not, the throne was hers to inherit. Camilla wouldn't find out for several days, but if she did, the outcry would rock the palace to its core. When the news eventually reached Queen Camilla, it did not come easily. It came like a slap, given not through official channels or from her husband, King Charles, but whispered by a terrified advisor who could no longer keep the secret hidden. They anointed her, the assistant reportedly stated. There was a ceremony. Kate was blessed as the future queen. It is already being referred to as her private coronation. Camilla initially remained silent. Those in the room report that she froze, eyes focused, and her teacup quivering slightly in her fingers. Then followed the rage. She slammed the fine china against a nearby table, shattering it, and unleashed a tempest unlike anything her servants had ever seen. "You will not erase me," she yelled, her voice piercing enough to cleave glass. "I'm the queen, not that girl, not her." Years of public restraint, subtle maneuvering, and regal formality gone in an instant. Camilla, who was always so collected in public, finally let out the fire she had been suppressing for so long. Fear, insecurity, and resentment. Because for Camilla, this was more than simply a symbolic event. It was about her entire legacy being erased from behind her back. She'd waited decades for the crown, weathered scandals, faced public wrath, and stood by Charles through exile and scorn. She had worked her way to the top, despite public criticism and palace politics. And now they've secretly anointed Kate? And worse? Charles had not stopped it. In fact, she soon discovered that he was aware of the situation but did not say anything. Not even a warning. Not one word. "He's letting her take everything," Camilla allegedly wailed to her confidential secretary. "The throne, the people, and now the crown. I was decent enough to stand by him, but not good enough to keep what was mine." The confrontation with William happened 2 days later. Camilla demanded an audience. William agreed, but he arrived alone, without Kate. When she confronted him, demanding to know who had authorized the ceremony, William remained chilly. "This is not about titles," he stated flatly. "This is about the future, and they already regard her as their queen. We just made it official." Camilla's voice trembled with wrath. "I'm the queen consort. Do you really comprehend what that means?" William did not blink. "Yes," he answered. "This implies you were accepted. It does not mean you will be remembered." With that, he left. Camilla received the message clearly. She was crowned, but only in name. Someone else now held the crown of affection, legacy, and devotion. Behind closed doors, she threatened to depart, to withdraw from public life, issue a statement, anything to reclaim her dignity. But advisors persuaded her to keep silent, believing that a public outburst would only prove William correct. So Camilla stayed. She attended activities. She donned her jewelry. She grinned for the camera. However, everyone inside the palace was aware that something had gone wrong. The queen consort had been humiliated in the most terrible way imaginable, not robbed of her crown, but rendered irrelevant while still wearing it. Her rule was not over, but it had turned hollow. And the worst part? The rest of the world took no heed. They were too focused on Kate. Camilla's meltdown triggered not just a personal crisis, but also the outbreak of a full-fledged internal conflict. A stealthy but evident fracture erupted inside the royal family, pitting two opposing forces, the old guard and the new power. On one side stood Queen Camilla and her allies, who had endured decades of tradition, controversy, and restoration throughout Charles's reign. These were the courtiers, counselors, and family loyalists who supported a monarchy based on tradition and precedent. To them, Camilla's rise promised redemption, a chance to modernize the throne without rewriting its roots. On the other side stood William and Kate, unquestionably the nucleus of the royal future. They were more than merely heirs, with support from a younger generation of strategists and a society emotionally involved in their image. They were pearl-encrusted revolutionaries who reshaped the monarchy for a world of social media, streamlined structure, and emotive optics. At first, the rift was not explosive. There were no lengthy speeches or public snubs, but the signals were apparent. Camilla's appearances started to decline. Her remarks, which had previously been widely promoted through royal channels, were quietly minimized. Kate stepped in with practiced elegance and seemed to attract a brighter spotlight with each appearance, leaving her in the background at events where she had previously occupied center stage. Even in Buckingham Palace, allegiances were shifting. Staff who formerly served Camilla's office began asking transfers to William and Kate's team. Former Queen Elizabeth II loyalists, once the toughest protectors of order, were beginning to confess quietly that the monarchy's center of gravity had shifted. Younger advisors whispered of a changing of the tide. The actual test occurred during the annual Royal Foundation Summit. This year's celebration was spearheaded by William and Kate, rather than Charles and Camilla, who have traditionally directed it. Camilla was mentioned as in attendance but never showed up. Sources later reported that she withdrew at the last minute, citing fatigue, but insiders knew better. One aide was blunt. This was no longer her stage. She didn't want to sit in the front row while the audience stood for Kate. Even King Charles, the great balancer, got caught in the midst. His impulse was to unify, soothe, and keep the peace. But his quiet following Kate's secret anointing had already cost him Camilla's trust. Now both sides were scrutinizing his every move. Behind the walls of Windsor, the once ironclad royal family now functioned as two distinct courts. The official monarchy, still led by Charles and Camilla, performed its ceremonial obligations, but the emotional monarchy, which shapes hearts and headlines, belongs wholly to William and Kate. The crown appeared to have been broken in two. Camilla realized that no matter how many titles she possessed, she had been outmaneuvered. Not by scandal or banishment, but by a younger, more savvy generation that changed the rules without ever announcing the game. The monarchy was still intact. However, it was no longer united. And the queen consort? She had become a ghost from the past, haunting a palace that was already preparing for a completely different type of queen. In the glittering world of royalty, power is frequently transferred quietly rather than loudly. And so, Queen Camilla, once the symbol of royal salvation, is gradually fading, not dethroned, but displaced. Still adorned in jewels and addressed with formality, she stands at the edge of a stage that has moved on without her. Although the crown is still formally shared with King Charles, it has become Kate Middleton's to carry in the hearts of the people. Not due to a pronunciation, not even due to bleeding. However, this is due to belief. The private ceremony, the media fascination, and the public's emotional attachment have all combined to form a quiet coronation that no one in the firm can deny. Kate is more than just the heir's wife. She is the monarchy's future matriarch. The true queen is waiting. In many people's eyes, she is already the queen. Camilla now walks palace halls carrying the weight of irrelevance, her hard-won acceptance seeping away like sand through royal fingers. Her grin and titles remain in public, but behind closed doors, no illusions exist. The legacy she sought to create has been discreetly altered, and she is no longer the author. As Prince William and Kate continue to ascend, leading with a vision based on modernism, grace, and public trust, Camilla has been forced to an unexpected role, a bystander in a monarchy she once fought for. For the time being, she simply watches. From the shadows of Windsor, from the corners of Buckingham, from the silent rooms where choices are made without her involvement. And, while her crown may still be on her head, its weight no longer commands the throne. Kate now owns that, not by law, but by inheritance. Camilla understands this. The monarchy has turned a page. For Queen Camilla, this might be the final chapter.